Hey everyone, Cody here.
Amanda.
From MTG Knights. Today we're going to take a look at my wife's deck and talk about that and see what it's all about and what we can do to maybe change it in the future and stuff like that. So what type of deck is this one? I know that you have a couple of decks.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Well, is my favorite now. It's my black and blue deck. It's a mill deck, so basically just...
Now, mill cards or mill life?
Mill cards.
Okay.
So basically just making my opponent run out of cards. Yeah.
Nice. Well, cool. All right, so what we'll do is we'll take a look at the deck. You'll show us the cards. You can talk about them as we go through. And then afterwards, we'll talk about the deck itself and, you know, what you like about it, what you don't, and what we can change.
Okay, so we're going to start with land. I run 21 land. The first ones are the Drowned Catacomb. They enter tapped unless you own an island or a swamp. I've run 3 of those. A Sunken Hollow, which is tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. I run 4 Evolving Wilds for landfall on some of my creatures. 2 Terramorphic. Same thing, just to prompt that
The
landfall. Yeah. And then some swamp and islands.
Now, let me ask you. You can keep
Okay.
going. Do you have more blue than black cards? Is that why you have more?
Yeah,
Okay.
My deck runs mostly blue. I have some sorceries and instances, but a lot of it is black and blue cards.
Gotcha.
So going into my creatures and my planeswalker, the only planeswalker that I keep in my deck is Jace, Memory Adept. Just because of his 0 has my opponent put their top 10 cards into their graveyard, which is like super easy each time. And then my Hedron Crab, this is why I have the Evolvings and Terramorphic, so that every time the land enters, they have to put the top 3 cards. When I get 2 or all 3 of these out on the field, and I can pull a Terramorphic or Evolving, that's a lot that you're putting into their graveyard. And then Manic Scribe, which enters the battlefield, they have to put the top 3 cards into their graveyard, but it also has Delirium. The only problem is that with this deck, I hardly ever run into Delirium because not a lot of my cards are going into my graveyard. Siren of the Silent Song. This one's pretty good because whenever I attack with it on my next turn, when I untap, they're discarding and putting a card from their library into their graveyard. Snapcaster. This one has Flash. I hardly ever use it for its Flash, but I use it for its ability where I can pull something from my graveyard as flashback. So I run 4 of those in my deck.
Snapcaster is pretty solid.
Yeah, it's a good card to
This
pull
card
from my
coming
graveyard. This is one of my favorites. Glimpse the Unthinkable. The target player puts top 10 cards into their graveyard.
It's a staple.
And it's only 2 to put out. So this is why I run the double color lands, is so that it's a pretty simple card to get out basically on my second turn. Breaking and entering. I've never used the entering side because I don't run red. But the breaking part, I can put they have to put their top 8 cards into their graveyard. It's one of the fun ones because if you can get a couple of these out a turn, my son hates when I can get 3 of these out on one turn. And
how many are you running? I don't think you said on
Oh,
Glimpse
sorry.
either.
For Glimpse, I'm running 4, and for Breaking, I run 4. And then Mind Funeral, they have to reveal cards from their library until they reveal 4 land cards. And then all of those cards go into their graveyard. This one, I only run 1 of these in here. But if I'm playing against someone that has a ton of land out, this one's really fun to play on them because in their library basically has no more land left. Startled Awake is one of my other favorites. This one, it costs 4, but they're putting the top 13 cards in their graveyard, and then you can pay, once it goes into your graveyard, you can pay 5 and you bring it back as Persistent Nightmare. And it has Skulk, and then when it deals combat damage to a player, you can return it to its owner's hand. So basically, I'm just putting Startled Awake right back into my hand each time. And those ones, I run 2 of those. And then Mind Sculpt is pretty simple. It's cheap. It only costs 2 again, and it puts the top 7 of their library into their graveyard. I run 2 of those. Traumatize is another favorite of mine if I can get it out with my Fraying Sanity, which I'll show you. The target player puts the top half of their library into their graveyard. When you're playing this with Fraying Sanity, you're basically, that's the rest of their deck and you're done. I run 2 of those. And then Extirpate. Okay, so I only have this card in my deck to fight against my husband's deck because he has his Demigod, what is it? Demigod of Revenge?
Yeah.
That card scares me. So I keep this card to watch when that card goes into the graveyard, and then I extirpate it. So because it exiles the card. And they have to search like their graveyard, their hand, and their library and exile all creatures with that same name. I have 2 of those in this deck. Dream Twist is a pretty cheap one to play. It only costs 1, and they're putting the top 3 into their graveyard, and then it has a flashback of 2. So this one's an easy one at the beginning of a game. I mean, on your second turn, you're already using it twice. And I have 2 of those in this deck. Fatal Push, I keep in my deck just to try to stay in the game a little longer, because it's kind of hard to, when you don't have a lot of creatures out, you kind of got to destroy other people's creatures, and it only costs 1 black. And then one of the better cards in my deck is Crypt Incursion. I run 2 of these. You basically gain 3 life for each card or creature card in the target player's graveyard. I have gotten up to like 140 life because of that thing, playing against my kids, which is fun. We already did creatures, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now the last is just my artifacts and my enchantments. So this is a new one that I put in there. It's the Renegade Map. I basically just get to, after it enters the battlefield, I can sacrifice it and search my library for a basic land card and reveal it, and then shuffle my library.
Basically like an artifact evolving almost.
Yeah.
You pay 1 to put it out, but you could, put a land out and then play that.
And put another land out.
Yeah, the next turn you put out 2 land, essentially.
I'm really just testing that card out. I haven't
It's
really
actually,
got
if
to
you
play
think
it that
about
much.
it, I never thought about it, but it would actually, I believe, because this would cause like a landfall proc.
Yeah.
Well, so on
when you sacrifice
one turn,
it.
Yeah, so on turn 2, like if you put that out first turn, second turn, you could get a triple landfall proc because you could do that, and then you could also do an evolving and something else. So I never thought about that, but yeah, go on.
Trepanation Blade. This one's an artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, defending player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card. And then the creature that this is attached to or equipped to gets +1/+0 until the end of turn for each card revealed that way. And they go into their graveyard. So again, this one actually, you're paying 5, but it's almost like Mind Funeral. And then Fraying Sanity. This one, I only have 1 of these in my deck. I used to have 2. I don't know what happened to my other one. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts top X cards of their library into their graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into the graveyard anywhere that turn. This one is great for just playing in general, because any cards that went into the graveyard that turn, they're just doubling it.
Yeah,
so
and if you played, so the Traumatize Fraying is an instant win.
And playing like 3 glimpses kind of ends it pretty quick too. Jace's Erasure is an enchantment that whenever I draw a card, I can have target player put the top card of their library into their graveyard. This one I just have out just to slowly mill them out if I can't get anything else out onto the field. So that's my deck.
Alright, cool. So we'll head over and we'll talk about the cards and kind of go over. Okay, so we took a look at the deck. I've got some questions for you, and then I had some thoughts kind of going through it, which is funny because we play all the time, but actually seeing the different cards that you have kind of broken down, I had some questions and some thoughts. So first off, we'll start with some of the questions I had. What do you feel like the strength of this deck is?
What do you mean?
Like, I don't know. What do you like about the deck, or what do you feel strong about the deck?
Oh, so one of the things I like about the deck, and I know this is kind of messed up, but just watching people put cards into their graveyard and not being able to play them is so satisfying. And
I can see that. Yeah.
They hate it so much. Just looking at and I know this is mean, but looking at the kids' faces when their cards are going to the graveyard and they're good cards, and they're just like. But now with you don't really look at your cards.
So I hate Crypt Incursion. I'll just say that right off the bat. Crypt Incursion is probably my least favorite card.
And you have a card in your deck
it's
just to mess with my Crypt Incursion.
The Harvest Pyre?
Yes.
Yeah, so that I can... So Harvest Pyre, I'll put on screen, it is an instant where you can exile your graveyard to do damage to a creature. And I talked about this in my own video, but I use... Because it's an instant, if she has Crypt Incursion, I try to hang on to Harvest Pyre so that when she uses Crypt Incursion, I use Harvest Pyre to exile my whole graveyard first so that there's no cards for her to get life from. So I literally have that card, the one card in here for this, but I mean, it's just a good overall card. But
that's just Extirpate is my...
That's my lead. Well, Extirpate's pretty annoying too.
Yeah.
So...
But I have to watch your land, because I know if you have all your land tapped, I'm safe to play Crypt Incursion. So, but it's just...
Yeah, it's true. And I only have one Harvest Pyre, so...
Crypt Incursion is my saving grace. I mean, that's how I stay in the game, because if I'm...
It's so much life.
Yeah.
It really is.
I mean, you're trying to get all of their library cards into their graveyard, and that is not... If you're not getting Fraying Sanity out right at the beginning, on your third turn, it's going to take a while to start getting other cards to get them milled. But getting Jace out as soon as you get 5 is a good deal too. So what were some of your...
Well, so that was strengths, and what is there anything else you like about the deck? I said seeing the cards go in there, Crypt Incursion getting the life if there's a decent amount in there. Even 10 creatures. That's 30 life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's game changing.
Yeah. So. Well, and then just winning a game with only 1 life because I've milled you out is really satisfying.
I can see that.
Yeah, just playing my son the other day, he got me down to 1 life, and I, on my last turn, played two Glimpse the Unthinkable, and then Breaking. And it was the rest of his cards. And I won the game with 1 life. And he still had 40 life. So it's fun.
Life is your life points are just a resource.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So obviously you can win with them. Okay, so what do you feel are weaknesses of the deck, or things that you don't necessarily like about this playstyle?
So a huge weekness is playing against aggro decks. Definitely can't...
I don't know what you're talking about.
You definitely can't last against decks that are doing damage right out the gate. If you're playing someone who's playing a red deck, you're definitely not... unless there's certain cards that you can get out right at the beginning, if you're lucky enough to draw those cards, it works, but... Man, those aggro, those red decks are super hard to play. It's the haste creatures that will do you in.
Actually, that was something that I was looking at some cards earlier because I was playing the mobile game.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that with this, this play style, you kind of have to last a little while to get those cards in the graveyard. Right?
Yeah. Unless
you have some kind of infinite mill combo that you can get on turn 4.
Yeah.
You have to last a while. And I was thinking about that this deck, I think, probably needs more removal or defenders.
So I had instances that killed your creatures right off the bat. But I had to get rid of those because I wasn't doing enough milling in the beginning. So what I did was I swapped those out for more breaking, Glimpse the Unthinkable, my Hedron Crabs. The Hedron Crabs actually, I mean, they're worth it for defenders, and I mean, if I can get them out in the beginning, because those cost, I forget what those
They cost one.
One? Are those ones the ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those cost one. So you're getting those out your first turn.
And I think, I'll come back to specific cards, but yeah, I was just thinking about that there may not be enough like removal in here, or at least cards to delay the game. Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're looking to overpower them.
Yeah.
You're just trying to like last long enough to get the cards in the graveyard. So probably on average like 6-7 turns.
You talked me out of a lot of those cards.
No.
Sure, okay.
I don't know. Well,
but it was to put more
Yeah.
milling cards in there, because my focus is I want a milling deck. Like, I don't want the focus to be on creatures. I want it to be, if I have a creature, it's milling in some form.
I think you just need enough to keep it in the game.
Yeah.
To like probably on average turn. I would say 6 through 8 is about where you kind of win.
4. I've won the game on 4.
I don't think that's average though. Not with this deck. I think once we can get some other cards in it to make it a little bit stronger, which we'll talk about. I had some ideas just to kind of talk about, possibly.
Okay.
Okay. So possibly like more either defenders or removal to delay the game long enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of your favorite cards, or what is your favorite card out of this whole deck? Like, what is your favorite, or maybe favorite 2 or 3?
So Crypt Incursion is my favorite, because just the look on people's faces of like complete disappointment that I'm playing that card.
Of you going from 3 life to 30
Yeah,
in one card.
It's fun.
And it's not even a rare. Like
fun.
it's literally a common. It's a common card, and it just obviously, but it's situational. You know, if you play it at the beginning and there's only 2 or 3, I still feel like it's still worth its weight.
Yeah.
Because even if you play it in the beginning and there was only 3 cards in there, like 3 creatures, you're still getting 9 life. I mean, that's not nothing for 1 card.
Hey, I had to use it in the beginning because you're...
Yeah, doing so much damage.
Oh, yes.
And so, like, I mean, honestly, for a common, I feel like it does carry its weight.
Yeah. And then my other favorite is Fraying Sanity. Just because, I mean, with Glimpse, for example, you're putting 10 cards in, and then at the end of the end step, every end step. So my end step, your end step.
It's double.
So if you're putting your own cards in the graveyard, I'm just constantly reminding you, pay your extra for Fraying Sanity. And that actually, the card pays off. And I'm surprised.
The really sad part is that if you have 2 Frayings, and you play 1 Glimpse, I mean, that's 40 cards.
Yeah, and that...
So you've got the 10, and then that 10 doubles, and then that doubles again. So that's 2/3 of the deck with 3 cards.
Well, and that's when Jace's Memory Adept comes into play too, because you have that out, you play Glimpse. That's 20 cards on one turn, plus Fraying.
It's 40, right? So if it's just those 3 cards, it's still 40. That's still 2/3 of the... And I mean... You think about it, you start with 7 cards, if you don't mulligan, but you start with 7 cards, so you're already down to 53. So to chunk out 40, all you have to play is 1 more Glimpse or Startled or
not
something.
Not even that. By the time I'm getting Jace out, because that's a 5 cost card.
So it's going to take, so it's at least 5 turns.
It's basically, the game's over by the time I get that out.
I actually think that Jace is weak. If you're using him for the 0 cost, to wait 5 turns to play him, it's almost better that you replace him with the more Startled or more Archive Traps, which I was going to talk about later. But I was thinking about that like the 5, he's a great card, but you tend, whenever we play, I notice that you tend to use the 0 more than the 1, so it's hard to build him up to the -7.
I use the 1 more against Austin. So the 1 I use against him. But that's just because by the time I get him out, I basically don't have any more cards in my hand. So I need to be drawing cards. So I'm using the 1. I'm drawing. And then if I have Jason's Erasure out, that's this one is prompting him to put the top card into his graveyard, and then this one's also prompting him to put the top one. So that's 2 cards, and then if Fraying's out, plus whatever I'm playing that turn, all that's going in there. So, I mean, he's worth it. It's just, yeah, he does cost a lot. My other favorite card we took out of the deck.
Which one?
Consuming Aberration.
Yeah.
It is a great defender.
It's a good card. So,
yes.
Consuming Aberration, the power and toughness is equal to the number
all
of
opponents.
cards in all opponents' graveyards. So, in a 1v1, it could be anywhere from 59, right?
Yeah.
So 1 to 59.
I think the highest I've gotten him up to is like 35.
Well, I think in a multiplayer game, we had him at like 50, 60,
oh, yeah,
70,
in multiplayer?
something like that. Some ridiculous number. But, so he's great. The problem is you play a simple removal spell, a counter, or like Austin Skywell of Shot.
Austin put that card in his deck just to take Consuming.
And see, that's my only problem with cards like that. Like, it's a super great card. Don't get me wrong. I mean, annoying card. But if you have any type of simple removal, now against me, because I'm a red aggro deck, that's a difficult thing for me to deal with, because most of my cards are 5 cost or below, so they're not going to be able to handle that. So it's great against me, but someone who has blue, like Harmony, blue, she has those cards that kind of to lock it down, or like Austin, who has cards like Skywell Shot, or something like you have, which if we build more decks and they put more black in there, you have a lot of those destroy target creature, right? So it's great, but it's like you put all these resources into it. But I guess it doesn't cost that much, and it does proc those abilities where they have to put, every time you cast a spell, don't they have to put a card in the graveyard?
Every time.
Oh no, it's the same thing as
Mind Funeral.
The Balustrade Spy, right? They have to search for a land.
Yeah.
So they're putting more cards in the graveyard, so they're making them stronger.
And it's every time you play a spell. So I've gotten that card out, and so the next turn, because I have that much land out already.
Yeah, you're playing
I'm playing like 2 or 3 spells. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is a good card. We could revisit it and maybe swap it out.
No, I took it out for a reason, because I ran into the issue where it just took so long to get out, and by that time I could have already played.
Do you remember what the cost was?
It's 5.
Is it 5?
Yeah, and it's a dual. It's a black and blue card.
Yeah,
and it's a legendary.
I mean, it is good though.
I think it's a legendary.
It's fine.
I don't remember where it's at.
I'll probably put it on screen. But
it is one. That one and Dinrova Horror are 2 of my absolute favorite cards in the entire game.
But I think, thinking about like the mill strategy, it's probably a great card, because it comes in one of those pre-constructed decks that we got it in, and it's a great card. The problem with it is that in that 5 cost, you could also play 2 cards.
Yep.
You could have milled them out by turn 5, or on the 5th turn, you could play 2 cards, 2 mill cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and by the time I get him out, you've already done so much damage that he's not really helping out. I think had I done because I had another black and blue deck that actually did damage.
Yeah.
It would have been worth it in there, but it's the whole milling aspect of it where, you get that card out and it's a 30, it's pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's, if you can't block it, or if you can't block it, kill it, or pacify it, then it becomes the game like that, like the catalyst for the win. So, all right. So, what cards would you like to add, swap out, or see more of?
So I would like to get 4. I would like to be up to 4 Fraying Sanity. Like that is,
4.
It is one of my favorite. To watch that card like
prop
on itself.
Yeah.
So it's just so much fun.
That makes sense. I honestly don't know about 4. I see 2 or 3 for sure. 2 for sure. 3 maybe.
Yeah.
Only because it's gonna double it, and 1 might become 2, might become 4. Might become 8. I guess I do see that issue, but if you're putting those out but you're not getting the cards in the graveyard, it could be an issue. I definitely think that 2 for sure, maybe 3, but I understand kind of the mentality. What else? What else would you like to take out, remove, swap?
I know we talked about. So I really don't want to carry Fatal Push. I find
you don't like it?
I don't. I feel like it's a pointless card. I mean, you're having to pay attention to their converted mana cost, and I hardly ever get to use this card.
Why?
Just because by the time I draw this card, it's not worth it against any of your creatures.
I mean, a lot of people run 4 of those, so...
Yeah, I haven't had any luck with it, so it doesn't really... Mind Funeral, I like Mind Funeral. I know that it's like a pain card. I would like to have a couple more just because I like you guys drawing for land. So especially against Sage. Sage's deck, because she's like drawing out so much land, by the time she's got that much land, I watch her and make sure she's got like almost 10 land out by the time I play that card, because that mills most of her deck. Alone. That card alone. I know we talked about, what was that? The Archive Trap?
Yeah, I was gonna come back to that. So.
I know we've talked about that one, and that's one that I'm really interested to put him in here, and I think I would replace, Mind Sculpt with that. I don't think I would, or Dream Twist, not Mind Sculpt, Dream Twist. Because Dream Twist is only giving me 3 cards in their graveyard.
Well, one thing you have to look at is the cost. So Archive Trap to play is 5, I believe, 5 or 6, unless there was a proc to it where you could pay it for 1, and I think it was like if a permanent left the battlefield or something. Oh no, it was if they searched their library.
Oh,
that's what it was.
Right.
It was an instant, because Archive Trap is basically if they searched their library this turn, you play it as, because it's an instant. You play it as an instant. You pay a 1 cost instead of 5 or 6, whatever the hard cost is, and basically they put 13 cards in there. So it's like a Startled, but instead of it being Startled, you can pay it for 1 if they search the library. So it's great for people with fetch lands, playing against people with fetch lands, because they're going to search the library. Especially Sage, because Sage has, she has the mono green, so
almost all of her cards.
Yeah, so she's got, the evolving, so she's proccing those basic lands or the fetch lands, but she also has like Oldenwald Hydra, which pulls out a land in the library. So like Archive Trap, I think that would probably be a huge shift. I
think I'm gonna replace my equipments for that. Because I mean, right now
I was gonna talk about that in a minute. So I wanted to come to those Trepanation Blades.
They're pointless.
So was there anything else for swapping out, removing, adding?
So I like Siren of the Silent Song, but it's a hard card to keep out. Like it dies quick because it's only a 1/2.
2/1.
Is it a 2/1?
I believe so.
Oh, it is a 2/1.
I'm pretty sure it's 2/1.
Oh, it's a 2/1. And then like you guys, it dies quickly, but it does have flying. So the good thing is that you guys, hardly anyone blocks it.
Yeah.
So, really, I only have it out there just to like have a defender for just a little bit.
Yeah, I had a suggestion for that. So, out of all of your cards, or out of the cards that you play with for milling, do you have one specific card that stands out that you would not like swap out, or it's kind of like a staple?
Well, I have a couple. I mean, Glimpse and Breaking, I think, have been in my deck since the beginning. I think that's really what got me into the milling deck, was having those in.
I was leaning towards that too. Yeah. Was Glimpse. I mean, Glimpse, a 2 cost, 10 cards. That's a 6th of your deck.
Yep.
In 2 turns, right? So
and
ideally, if you did all 4, I mean, you've done 2/3 of their deck, and if you think about the math. I mean, you're starting with 7, so you're already at 53. So if you do 4, by turn 3, if you've already done 2 of those, that's really half the deck.
Yeah.
Because they're at 50, you've done 20. So by that point, half of their deck is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you could play something like Crypt Incursion turn 3. You're already getting that health back to recoup any damage they've done if you draw Crypt Incursion. I see Glimpse as kind of being a non-negotiable.
Yeah, Glimpse and Breaking. Because Breaking, I mean, I know Breaking's the same cost, but it's doing 8. And so it's not, I mean, it's just as good as, I mean, it's 2 card difference.
Yeah.
but you're still...
It's pretty much the second best to
Yeah.
Glimpse. You almost can't get any better.
One I wouldn't mind trading out because you basically have to pair it with Fraying Sanity for it to do any real damage is Traumatize. Traumatize costs too much. Sometimes I end up just holding it in my hand for no reason because when they get down to this much, there's no point. Yeah, there's no point using it unless you have Fraying Sanity out. Traumatize is just not worth it.
Yeah, and I've seen people not go that route, so that I could see that. Like early game, it's great. Early game, that's
if you get that 5 land.
Yeah, that's true. Because you could have done 2 or 3 glimpses or breakings or something like that, and already done half your deck. So yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, but that's what I was gonna say was a glimpse. Kind of the staple, like it's not going anywhere. Like for me, the on-crop crasher for me is a staple because it's a 3 cost, it's haste, and I can exert, so something can't block, so I'm almost guaranteed to do the damage. So I just find that card for me, like I could swap out a bunch of other cards, but for me, like that
one stays
makes
in there.
Sense.
Yeah, I don't think I've
Demigod
ever swapped
too,
it out. No, I hate that card.
Demigod of Revenge is just the funnest
it's such a bastard. Especially when I'm milling you out and all of them go into the graveyard, but the one in your hand. Yes, they all come out.
Okay, so I had some notes about specific cards as we were kind of going through them. What are your thoughts on this Jace as compared to some of the other Jaces that are out there?
I haven't really found a Jace that I've been willing to put into this deck.
Besides this one.
Yeah. None of them really just seem like it's gonna do what I want. I've never gotten to his -7, even though he starts at a 4 and I do play his +1, but that's because Austin got smart and started attacking him and killing him off right away.
I do. I mean, I try to. Unless I already have you in lethal range, and I could just do the damage to you. But I try to take them out, especially Austin's. Like Johnny gets annoying after a while, so try to kill.
I can't stand his Johnny.
So.
No, I just haven't found one that's really been worth putting in. So.
And do you think it would be worth putting in more Jaces? This same one. Yeah, I know you can only have one on the field because it's the same one. Do you think it's worth it or not?
So
I don't think so.
I know
because
that
of the
this
cost.
I was gonna say I know this sounds dumb, but I really like the cards that I'm staying under that 2. I'm staying within that 2 to 3 cost because. With this deck, I found that getting land out, which once we put the fetch land in, or is that what they're called?
Which ones? The dual
evolving
lands? Those are the basic fetch.
Yeah, so once we put those in, I found it easier to get land out. But before, I wasn't playing with that. I was playing with just land.
Yeah.
Or basic lands. And I was never getting up to that cost. And by the time I get to him, I'm dead.
And see, that's why I think, like, he's a great card.
Yeah.
I wouldn't probably run more than one of them. Now...
In a double, when we're playing teams, he's worth getting out. But, and he's easier to get out when we're playing teams because that other person is basically keeping me alive.
And one thing to look at is, like, you know how in the starter decks, it comes with that little mana curve thing where it explains, like, how many cards you should have of one cost and, like... And kind of like the sweet spot is that 3 to 4.
Yeah. And I stay within the 2 to 3.
But I mean, you kind of almost want a couple of high cost cards because you're gonna get that mana. Eventually, if you survive, you're gonna get that mana.
I've played some games where I've won the games with three lands.
You can, but that's not the majority of games.
No.
Right. So like it's almost fine to have a few high cost cards like. That are like 5 or 6, but not to run too many because then you run into the issue of if you get that card at the beginning of the game, it's almost useless for that many turns. Saying that you're even going to get that land, within a few turns. So I like the card. I think that if you did go the route of swapping some of this out for archive traps, that's probably going to be your best bet because then if they don't search the library ever, which they would. Most likely they're going to for some reason. But if they didn't, if you had nothing else, an archive trap, a 13, I think it's 5 or 6 for archive trap to play. You play that, you can pay the cost, and you're still getting 13 cards in the graveyard. So it's not ideal like Startled.
Yeah.
I think Startled's probably the best.
Now, Startled costs 4.
I think that's worth it.
And then to bring it out of your graveyard transformed, it's 5. And I've only
just
done that
leave it.
just a few times.
I honestly...
But I only bring it out just to play it again.
Yeah.
So...
And see, that seems kind of worth it if you have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I feel like the Startled is a good... That's probably as good as it's going to get for that cost.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously there's nothing like Glimpse. There's no... I haven't seen an 11 or 12 that was 3 cost. Because that would be like the next ideal thing. Seeing as how Glimpse is 2 for 10, right? A 2 cost for 10 cards. Yep. Unless they're probably... And if you guys are watching this and you know of milling cards that are like, they can do 11 or 12 for like a 3-4 cost, let us know in the comments section. But I haven't seen that. So to me, it seems like Archive Trap and Startled Awake are kind of the next best thing for the amount. Because eventually you'll get that land if you're still in the game.
Yeah.
Right? So... Yeah, so Archive Trap seems like that would kind of be the next best thing. That or more Startleds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but steal some of your water.
I guess like the biggest, like, and I know you're going to get to these were just put in within the last week.
Yep.
Like, I just put them in. And it was only, I think I replaced some instance that... Actually, I don't even remember what I took out. I just put them back in just to try them.
I haven't seen Balustrade Spy.
So I took Balustrade Spy out.
Too high of a cost.
It's a high cost, and at the time that I was playing with him, I never got him out on the field.
My only issue with the cards that cause you to draw until you find the land is that variable is so much. Like, I mean, we play those games
where it's the first land.
The first 4.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, the next card is a land. Or if you play Mind Funeral, it's that number is the amount that you draw that time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, yeah, draw 4 land. Oh, yeah, well, these next 4 cards are my land.
Yeah,
so,
and I've had that happen a lot.
And see, that's my only issue with those types of cards. It's like the cost is not too bad. It's 3, and you know... For 3, you're going to get 4 cards in there, but I feel like for 4, if Startled is 4, you may as well just pay the extra 1 and know for sure you're getting 13 cards in the graveyard. That's my argument for it. But, it's obviously your...
I haven't even used these yet. Like, we put them in, and I haven't even used them.
Yeah,
well, I've used Renegade Map. I did get to use that one, and again, when you get it out with the Hedron Crab, and you're playing a Terramorphic or Evolving Wilds, like, that makes it worth it.
And like I said when we were going through the cards, like, I had never considered that it does it basically does a landfall proc as an artifact. And I hadn't even thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. So that would make sense.
I mean, this is just putting it in your hand.
Yeah.
But you're getting that land instead of having to wait for... I mean, it's guaranteed on the next
it doesn't
turn.
put it on the
No,
field.
but you're getting it... you're getting it in your hand so that if you do end up with your... if you end up with no land in your hand, that's like a great...
I thought it put it on the field, so... No. I don't think it's as strong as I thought. You're paying 1 to just pull another land into your hand. So I guess, it might be okay later on, because if you're not drawing land, you can go ahead and use it later on. So it's almost like insurance.
Yeah.
Right? So you put it out turn 1 if you can, and then you just kind of leave it there until you run out of land in your hand, then you use it. So it's like insurance for later to get that land later.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I might as well just have 4 Terramorphic Expanse and 4 Evolving Wilds in there, and then I don't have to use that.
Or dropping a Hedron Crab for that 1, so that when you do play a land next turn, you're already proccing the landfall.
Yeah.
So that, I thought that put it on the field, so that was my mistake. Okay, so
I just read it wrong.
The Hedron Crab, you have 3, right? So... Are you planning to go to 4 Hedron Crabs? From what I've seen in a lot of the milling decks, they tend to have 4 of those. It only, just because
I don't have a fourth card. That's why. We only have 3.
But
That's
I mean,
why I only have 3.
if you like when you get cards,
yeah. So I think I would put my Manic Scribe. I would trade my Manic Scribe out for that.
It
Because
just-
Manic Scribe to me, I find it to be a pointless card.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because for me, Delirium doesn't happen. The most that I'm getting in my graveyard are instants and sorceries. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not ending up with anything else in there unless I'm playing against Austin, who has
Well, that's not
destroying
true
enchantment
because
cards.
when you play those basic lands, that's a land. In the
Oh,
graveyard.
the lands.
The basic fetch. So, okay, so the next one was the Siren of the Siren Song. I would swap that out because you're right. I mean, it's a flying, sure, that's great. I had an idea for this, and it was the Wall of Frost. So I actually found this card. I've seen it before, but I saw it in the game.
Doesn't Harmony have that?
She might. It's
Okay.
I think it's a 3 cost. It's blue, and it's a 07 defender. So it doesn't attack, but it's an 07, and I think it has reach. I'm not 100%, but it may not have reach. But I know for sure that it has the ability where if it gets attacked, that turn, the next turn, they don't attack.
Yeah.
So that alone would probably keep you. A 07 is pretty massive for a 3 cost.
And I think Harmony does have that one.
It's
that
such
sounds
an
really
annoying
familiar.
card.
So the reason why I like Siren of the Siren Song is because it's making your opponent discard. Not only are they putting the top card from the library into their graveyard, they're also discarding a card. And for me, I'm trying to get as many cards so you can't play anything into your graveyard. So it
does have a decent
especially
effect.
when Austin only has 1 card left and he has to go in his graveyard.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
No, I mean, it makes sense. So that was just a suggestion that I had, like putting something in it's almost like a wall, literally.
Yeah,
it's
a wall.
To just kind of delay them for the game. But you're right. I mean, obviously it's not going to stop flying for someone who owns like Austin or Harmony who has spirits.
Austin hardly ever gets his flying out.
But I mean, yeah. So that was just something I had. The other one we already touched on, like removing Mind Funeral, because it's not a guaranteed thing. I mean, you can get anywhere from 4 cards in the graveyard to like 13, something like that, right? So it's such a variable that for me, the math just doesn't add up for the cost. So it can kind of be like a double-edged sword, because like sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's not. I'd rather have that predictability built in where you know for sure, okay, I've already put 30 cards in the graveyard, and this is going to put another 10 or 13 or whatever.
Mind Funeral makes sense when I'm playing against someone like Sage, who's constantly pulling her land out. And when she has so much land on the field, I've used that card to finish her off.
But the counter argument for me to that is that when she has that much land on the field, she probably is going to overpower you with something.
Yeah, she's already has Hydras out for that turn. But
I see what you're saying.
I finished her off. Yeah, she has to continue to draw because she has no more land left.
I mean, and that makes sense. But say you draw a Mind Funeral at the beginning of the game,
then I'm holding on to it.
And I play it. Yeah, I mean, essentially, when you're looking at the cards, you want cards that you can play anytime or in a majority of situations, right? So that was something I wanted to talk about. We talked about Archive Trap, which I think should probably go in here.
We've talked about we've looked at that card to put into my deck. We just don't have it.
Yeah, so. I think that's probably gonna have to go in here. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. And then possibly more Startled. I don't know what your ideas are on that.
Do I only run 2 of those?
Startled, yeah. Because I mean that's 13. So between.
Yeah, but Startled, there's games where I've never got to play the card because I've only had 3 land. However, again, once I put Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds in, I started getting the land that I needed because before I was just relying on my deck to give me land when I drew and just not ending up with the land that I have. So.
Also, you could just be running too lean. 21 isn't bad. There's some people who run 20. There's some people who run 23.
I was at 23.
Yeah, I think 23 is probably too much for this. But I mean, if 21 makes sense for you, then you leave it. But yeah, so it could just be that as well. So that was so I think Archive Trap for sure, at least 2, just to kind of get your card count up, like for the amount of cards that you're putting in the graveyard. I think taking
these 3, if I had cards to put in here, like right now, I would swap them out.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Okay, so the second, I think we talked about Fraying Sanity. You want to
I would like another Fraying Sanity.
Up that to at least 2.
Yeah.
Right.
And I really 3, but 2 would be okay.
Yeah. Okay, now we're to what I wanted to talk about. So the Trepanation Blade, just for this deck, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't, you're not attacking. So the Trepanation Blade makes no sense because in most situations, at least that I've played against you or I've seen you play, you're on the defense, not the offense. So the Trepanation Blade almost makes no sense because this only works for attacking players. So if you're never attacking, Trepanation Blade is a waste of time. So I get like putting it in because we need to get more cards.
Yeah.
But it just makes no sense in the deck at all. So you could honestly probably put in land, or you could probably put in some defenders, and it would make more sense than Trepanation Blade at this point. Let's see. I think that's actually it, because everything else was, the last thing was the Wall of Frost, which we already talked about. Just like a wall, or there's walls with reach. Just things to, like, creatures to put in that are going to last a little longer.
Yeah.
Just to survive. But from what I've seen in some of these milling decks, black and blue, they don't run a lot of creatures.
Nope.
I mean, and all of the creatures that they run support the idea of getting those cards in the graveyard, like Snapcaster to
Straight Spy
to proc it. Which how many Snapcasters did you have? 2 or 3?
Snapcasters, I thought I had a lot of those. Sorry. 4.
Oh,
I do run 4 of those,
okay.
yeah. Only because with these, it gives you flash, and you're playing another card from your graveyard with flashback.
Yeah.
So, the only time these cards suck is Ash Zelda.
And that's just a one situation thing. So
it's always against you.
Yeah. Or Austin, who has counter spells, so he'll counter the spell as you either bring in Snapcaster and just counter that, or counter the card that you're playing from the graveyard. So, I think that's it. So
now I want to get rid of these. Now I gotta find new cards for these.
So just some thoughts. Talking kind of back and forth about some of the things you can do with it. That's pretty much it. That's all I had. As we go through the deck, we'll probably make some changes in the next few days. Probably record that as well to kind of show the difference. Maybe play before and after.
I'll leave them in so we can play with, and then take them out so we can see how it was removing them.
But that's pretty much it. Did you have anything else about the deck, or about just any thoughts about it?
No, it's a fun deck to play with. This is actually the only deck that Austin wants me to play with. He doesn't like me using any of my other decks, or my other deck. It is an art to learn this deck, and it's not easy when you're going against someone that's doing that damage right off the bat, or with someone who's building up an army, because if you're not getting any of your creatures out, you're dead. So, but it is fun.
Yeah, I think it's. Obviously you win sometimes. Definitely think it could be stronger.
It could be stronger, yeah.
And I think it's come a long way, because we used to have was it
Grindstone?
Clock? Was it grind clock or grindstone?
And Painter's Servant.
And
I've never been able to use those.
I got both of those. We got those for the deck.
Yeah.
And then, they just didn't work. So essentially it was like an infinite mill combo where you use Painter's Servant to turn all cards one color, and then you use Grind Clock or Grind Station or whatever.
I don't remember what it was called.
No, it wasn't Grind Station. It was either Grind Clock or Grindstone or something like that. And it basically, you just kept drawing cards until you drew cards that weren't of the same color, but because of Painter's Servant, it made them all the same color. So it sounds like a fun combo in theory.
The problem with that is that you discard 2 cards, you put 2 cards in your graveyard, and if it's not a land and they share the same color, then they repeat that process. The problem is that when I think like the one time I got to play it was you would discard 2 and then it would be both land. Or you discard 2, one of them would be land.
And that's
then
why
it
you
was
needed
like
the
no
Painter's
point.
Servant. It was you almost needed the Painter's Servant for that to really work.
No, the Painter's Servant was just to turn them all one color.
No, it turned everything the same color.
Yeah, but the problem is that it was land. So
No, every even land would be colored that. It was every permanent that was not on the field already would turn that color.
I know that. But if it was a land card, even if it was the same color, if it was a land card, they didn't have to repeat it.
Yes, they did.
I could have swore it was you.
No, it was every. No, the problem is that the normal proc of Grind Clock, Grindstone, whatever card it was, I'll find it and put it on screen. But whatever that was the issue with the regular card itself was that land is colorless. So when you played that normally, if you drew land, you would stop because land is colorless. But Painter's Servant made everything that wasn't already on the field. It made it all the same color so that those lands counted. That was
those
it.
2 cards.
But they just, I mean,
it was pointless.
It sounds fun in theory, but it's not something to build a whole deck around. So anyway, but that's it. That's all I've got. Unless you've got anything else. So
this was fun.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the deck. Like I said, we'll kind of go through it. Some of the changes that we'll make, we'll document, kind of play maybe before and after to kind of see the changes and see how it progresses. But that's pretty much it for this video. So we will see you guys in the next one. Take care.